you miss the Avengers? Well, the brand new team may fill that void. You probably know the Thunderbolts are coming in 2025, and today we'll be breaking down each member of the legendary superhero team. Let's start with Bucky Barnes. He made his first appearance in the MCU in Captain America: The First Avenger. He was Steve Rogers' best friend since childhood and a skilled soldier. He made the cut in the army before Steve Rogers even had a chance. Bucky's cybernetic prosthetic arm is a key part of why he is so powerful, adding to his superhuman strength and durability. Due to the Hydra experiments that were put on him, Bucky possesses strength, speed, agility, and endurance beyond that of any human that we normally would see. Unlike Steve, Bucky was confident and physically capable from a young age. When World War II broke out, he enlisted in the army and he made the cut, unlike Steve. During the war, he was thought to be dead by an accident with Steve, and Steve, he took it hard. But Bucky was secretly captured by Hydra. They gave him a metal arm and brainwashed him and experimented on his body. He reemerged decades later as a Hydra assassin, the Winter Soldier, in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Already skilled in combat, Bucky spent years as nothing but like a human weapon, which turned him into an expert marksman and hand-to-hand combatant. So there Bucky is, and he's completely brainwashed, but his intelligence is still intact, which makes him an even more useful asset to Hydra. The time he spent as a covert assassin made him one of the most dangerous operatives in the world, doing everything from espionage to technical planning. The way I see it is he was probably the one who could take out John Wick. So he isn't as physically enhanced as someone who takes the super soldier serum. The experiments Hydra performed on Bucky's body helped to slow his aging and grant him accelerated healing. Steve does manage to save Bucky from Hydra's control, but his character arc has been inevitably marked by his past traumatic experience. The decades living as the Winter Soldier deeply changed Bucky. He went from being friendly and charming to this cold and detached person. During the time that he was brainwashed, Bucky killed anyone who Hydra wanted him, including Tony Stark's parents. In Captain America: Civil War, Bucky's past actions influenced the rift between Steve and Tony. After the Civil War, Wakanda gave Bucky amnesty and kept him in a cryostasis until a cure for his brainwashing could be found. But unlike Ted Williams and Walt Disney, being frozen worked out for Bucky. During the Infinity War, Bucky was given a new vibranium prosthetic arm, and it's pretty sweet. He fought alongside the Wakandans against the invasion of Thanos' army of Outriders. The guilt Bucky carries from realizing all he has done is better explored in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bucky's struggles with identity are the center of the show, along with Sam Wilson's own issues with the Captain America mantle, while they work together to stop the Flag Smashers and end up becoming friends. Now, he's ready to become a superhero. Second on the list is Black Widow, also known as Yelena Belova, who made her MCU debut in Black Widow, introduced as Natasha Romanoff's sarcastic adoptive younger sister. I think we all like when she made fun of Natasha for the way that she drops and does those little poses. You know, she called her a poser. Born in Russia, Yelena was raised as part of a Soviet sleeper family alongside Natasha. When their mission ended, the sisters were forcibly sent to the Red Room, a brutal espionage program that turned young girls into elite assassins. Yelena spent most of her life under the control of the Red Room, becoming a formidable fighter. She has no superpowers, but her training and combat skills make her one of the deadliest MCU characters. Like Natasha, she's an elite spy capable of taking down enemies far stronger than herself by using precision and strategy. Well, impulsive at times, but Yelena is a quick thinker, adapting to any situation, like a fight in an elevator perhaps. After breaking free from the program due to an antidote that neutralized the mind control chemicals, she set out to free other Black Widows from the Red Room. Yelena discovered Natasha had died and was sent by Valentina, who, we'll discuss her later in the video, to kill Clint Barton. She went after him in Hawkeye, believing he was responsible for Natasha's death. During their fight, Clint refuses to retaliate, trying to convince Yelena that Natasha sacrificed herself willingly to save the world. When he performs a secret whistle that only Natasha and Yelena used, she finally realizes he's telling the truth. But at the same time, she apparently continues to work for Val and is recruited by her to become part of the Thunderbolts. Some fans believe that's because Val will tell her that the mission was a test, and she knew Clint would eventually prove his innocence. The test was meant to see if Yelena has what it takes to be the team's leader, to accept the mission to kill an Avenger. But something tells me that Yelena just might not trust Val this whole time. It's keep your friends close, keep your enemies even closer. Or maybe she's just a fan of V. Much like Bucky Barnes, Yelena also embarks on a journey of self-discovery after being freed from the Red Room. Seeing purpose beyond being a weapon, her role in Hawkeye showed how she struggled with her identity, but Thunderbolts will apparently expand on that, putting her at the forefront of events. Third on the list is Alexei Shostakov, also known as Red Guardian. He's only appeared in Black Widow. His country's only super soldier, he was introduced as the Soviet Union's answer to Captain America. After his mission in the United States ended, Alexei was imprisoned by General Draov. Though he was once a proud Soviet hero, he became a washed-up prisoner. Natasha and Yelena freed him, and he had a new chance to prove he could still fight. And he sort of proves it. In the upcoming movie, he'll be reunited with Yelena when she asks for his help. Likely because she is struggling with the idea of being on a team, and having a familiar face in it with her would be better. His character will be a comic relief on the team, and he's apparently the only one who likes the name Thunderbolts. Let's jump into the fourth, John Walker. He was introduced as the new Captain America, chosen by the US government to replace Steve Rogers after his retirement, which quickly took a very dark turn. He made his first MCU appearance in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He struggled with the pressure of living up to Captain America's legacy. Despite his military training and abilities, Walker lacked Steve's moral compass and humility. He tried to demand respect as Captain America, but his own personal insecurities pushed him down a dark path. His frustration peaked with him taking the Super Soldier Serum, which enhanced his abilities, but also amplified his aggression and arrogance. After losing control and publicly executing a flag smasher who had already surrendered, Walker was stripped of the Captain America title. He was later recruited by Valentina, who gave him a new identity as US Agent. In the Thunderbolts trailer, we've seen Walker reading some unfavorable news about himself. He will apparently remain one of the most ambiguous characters in the franchise, and he may demonstrate his gratitude for Valentina with mindless obedience. Unlike the original comic book version of the character, the MCU's version of Taskmaster is revealed to be Antonia, the daughter of General Draov. Let's jump into Antonia Draov, another Thunderbolts character who made her MCU debut in Black Widow. Wow, this movie's basically Black Widow 2. As a child, Antonia was caught in an explosion caused by Natasha Romanoff when she attempted to kill Draov. Antonia survived, but was left with brain damage. Her father experimented on her, turning her into Taskmaster by implanting a chip in her brain that allowed her to perfectly mimic the fighting styles of anyone she observed. She can mimic the best fighters in the MCU perfectly, being able to analyze and counter an opponent's moves in real time. Her chip is complemented by a high-tech helmet that assists in her combat and memory retention. After being freed from Dracov's control in the end of Black Widow, Antonia is probably feeling just as lost as Yelena. Next we have the one and only Ghost, also known as Ava Star. She made her MCU debut in Ant-Man and the Wasp as an antagonist. She was introduced as a tragic figure who was desperate to cure her condition, which caused her body to phase uncontrollably through matter. Unlike the Ghost from the comics, who was a male mercenary, the MCU reimagined the character as a female victim of a scientific accident. When an experiment went wrong, her parents were killed. Ava survived, but the accident altered her molecular structure, causing the reality of her body to become unstable. She was later taken in by S.H.I.E.L.D. and became a covert operative, using her phasing abilities for espionage. When S.H.I.E.L.D. collapsed due to Hydra's infiltration, she was left on her own to look for a cure for her condition, which was slowly killing her. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ava is helped by Janet to stabilize her quantum essence. Since then, her fate has been a mystery, but it's safe to assume she too would love a chance at redemption for her past actions. And last but not least, we need to talk about Sentry, who will make his MCU debut in Thunderbolts. We still don't know if Bob or the Sentry or whatever he's going to be called in this will be a member of the Thunderbolts or not, but here's how we think his story fits into the movie. Bob Reynolds has godlike strength, being often compared to DC's Superman, but his immense power comes with a tragic downside, as he carries a dark version of himself known as the Void. Bob was a meth addict who broke into a laboratory and ingested the Sentry Serum, a compound meant to recreate the Super Soldier Serum. Upon taking a hit of this stuff, he also fractured his mind, creating a destructive and uncontrollable alter ego. In Thunderbolts, he may be a super weapon created by the government to be the most powerful hero on Earth, but his unstable nature could make him a major threat to the team and the entire MCU. There's the possibility that the film will maintain Sentry's origin story from the comics as an addict stealing the serum. He just breaks into the Avengers Tower in search of his next high. The team may discover Bob has powers at the same time as himself and Valentina do, distracting the protagonist from the CIA director's shady operations momentarily. Now that we've covered all the characters, let's dive into the trailer and upcoming release. Thunderbolts is scheduled to be released on May 2nd, 2025. It's going to be the last film in the MCU's Phase 5 and follow the group of anti-heroes going on missions for the United States government. In context, this means they indirectly work for Thaddeus Ross, who will not only become the Red Hulk in Captain America: Brave New World, but also the President of the United States. We suspect that the team will be named after the President's nickname, Thunderbolt, even though that's not what happens in the comics. The reason for the asterisk in this title is still a mystery, but we've seen a scene in the footage released in 2024 where Bucky says, "We can't call ourselves that," when Alexi says the group's name. We believe the team will be given the name by Val under the President's orders, but they will not only mostly hate the name, they will eventually realize the CIA and the entire government are being run by people they can't trust. They go rogue, changing their name in the process. How did the MCU build up the narrative to this point? Well, it has a lot to do with one other character in particular and the growing political challenges since the blip. Let's get into it.
Well, these boots are not made for walking.
From the trailer and her role so far in the MCU, we already know that Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is behind the assembling of the Thunderbolts. Val is the director of the CIA who bought the Avengers Tower from Tony Stark after Civil War. Since Iron Man brought back the vanished half of the world population, Val has been appearing in MCU projects recruiting anti-heroes to work for her. Her first MCU appearance happens in the episode Truth of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Soon after John Walker kills Nico, she compliments him on taking the Super Soldier Serum and promises an opportunity to work again. We've seen her and her influence again in other 2021 projects. In Black Widow, she lied about Clint Barton being responsible for Natasha Romanoff's death to recruit Yelena, who then went after him in the series Hawkeye. Thunderbolts will come out soon after Captain America: Brave New World, and Val is likely working closely with Thaddeus Ross. This makes a lot of sense considering Ross has been trying to control superpowered individuals for a long time. Ross will likely antagonize Sam Wilson in his first Captain America movie because Sam works under his own moral code. Bucky's friendship with Sam might be a key factor in the Thunderbolts realizing Val is sending them on questionable missions. In the trailer, it looks like the team may become trapped within a reality shaped by the Void. This leads us to believe that the Void is the antagonist in Thunderbolts, and Bob will eventually learn how to control his powers thanks to intelligent teamwork by the Thunderbolts. But for now, we have to wait until May to find out what really happens in the movie. What are your expectations for Thunderbolts?
Welcome to CBR. Were you told that the Thunderbolts are Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad? Well, that's not really the truth. Today, we are debunking 5 lies or misconceptions some fans have about this team and their upcoming movie. When Marvel Studios announced the making of a Thunderbolts movie, many fans argued that the premise was underwhelming because it resembles the plot of the Suicide Squad. And yes, the Suicide Squad from DC Comics and the Thunderbolts from Marvel Comics do have a few things in common that justify the comparison. Both the Thunderbolts and the Suicide Squad consist of characters with questionable morals who start out as villains or anti-heroes. But the common ground ends there. When we analyze the details, diving into how the teams are being portrayed in comics and on screen, it's clear they're not the same. The Suicide Squad is a team of incarcerated villains coerced into working for the government. They agree to carry out dangerous missions in exchange for some time deducted from their sentences, being essentially disposable to the ruthless Amanda Waller. Meanwhile, the Thunderbolts have a different origin in the comics. They started as villains posing as heroes in 1997 in a storyline where Baron Zemo makes his supervillain group Masters of Evil disguise as the Thunderbolts. However, the group soon turns against their leader and becomes a team of actual superheroes. The first Thunderbolts were former villains seeking redemption, and not villains seeking compensation like the Suicide Squad. The following versions of the Thunderbolts were even less comparable, consisting of anti-heroes instead of reformed villains. Unlike the Suicide Squad, whose members are forced into missions with threats and deals, most Thunderbolts team members join voluntarily. Some versions were controlled by villains like Norman Osborn and Wilson Fisk, but that was due to corruption. The team itself features morally ambiguous characters instead of villains. In the latest version of the team in Marvel Comics, the Thunderbolts leader is the Winter Soldier. He's not a villain working for the government. Bucky is a former assassin who worked under mind control and whose heart was never evil. The comics lineup includes Natasha Romanoff, Sharon Carter, Yelena Belova, Red Guardian, and U.S. Agent, highlighting espionage skills, but the movie lineup includes characters like Taskmaster and Ghost, who were antagonists in previous Marvel movies. Still, if we compare the Suicide Squad movie to what we know so far about Thunderbolts, there are key differences. Even Antonia Draov and Ava Star are not as villainous as Harley Quinn, who is portrayed at a turning point in the DCU, but has a dark supervillain history. Taskmaster and Ghost are former villains in a similar way as the Winter Soldier is. They were never evil deep down. As we've seen in the latest trailer for Thunderbolts, Bucky recruits the team and Yelena says she's not a hero. Val proposes someone should fill the void left by the dissolution of the Avengers, and now the Thunderbolts fight the void. Characters like Yelena Belova or John Walker feel like they aren't heroes. Not because they are supervillains forced to do good, but because they don't feel good enough to call themselves heroes. They are characters who dreamed of becoming heroes, but due to uncontrollable circumstances or terrible mistakes, ended up with a bad track record. If we compare Yelena to Harley Quinn specifically, the angles are incredibly contrasting. Yelena did hunt down Hawkeye, for example, but she has never willingly set out to do harm. Yelena is naturally an anti-hero, while Harley Quinn is a supervillain who eventually becomes anti-heroic. Their personalities and motivations are even more contrasting. Yelena is a sarcastic assassin who fights with precision using her extensive training in espionage and combat. She's initially driven by revenge, but now seeks purpose beyond being an assassin. Harley Quinn is the exact opposite. She's unpredictable, chaotic, and has an exaggerated sense of humor. She's primarily driven by self-preservation and fun, only doing what suits her and not caring about a deeper purpose. While some members of the Suicide Squad are portrayed as leaning towards redemption, the trailers for Thunderbolts indicate the upcoming Marvel team will be about proving themselves to be heroes from the start. One thing that will definitely prove the Thunderbolts are heroes is saving New York from an extremely powerful new character who's out of control. Some fans argue that Bob Reynolds, who's both the Sentry and the Void, is way too powerful to be the antagonist of the upcoming movie. Sentry is indeed one of Marvel's most powerful characters of all time, in terms of superpowers and abilities, but his biggest weakness is his fragile mental state, and it makes it harder for him to use his own powers intentionally. He rarely unleashes his full potential because he is afraid of the consequences. The Thunderbolts probably won't need to overpower him physically for the most part, but outthink or contain the dark part of him. The concern about how a team of assassins can fight the Sentry makes sense, but the Thunderbolts have dealt with superpowered people before in the comics. and there are several ways in which the inclusion of Bob Reynolds can work in the narrative. In the 2011 Thunderbolts comics, the team, which consisted of characters like Luke Cage and Ghost, had to fight Hyperion. While many fans mistake Sentry for being Marvel's version of DC's most iconic hero, it's actually Hyperion who most resembles Superman. And even so, the Thunderbolts were the team that killed Hyperion in Marvel Comics. We have no doubt that, with teamwork, the Thunderbolts will come up with a way to stop the Void in the movie. 3 team members have taken super soldier serums, 1 has phasing powers, and the other 2 are highly trained by the Red Room. They will be fine, don't worry. We already know that Thunderbolts will be about the team establishing themselves as a respectable lineup of superheroes. But many fans initially suspected that the asterisk had been added to the title because it would be in fact an Avengers movie, depicting the team's formation ahead of Avengers, Doomsday in 2026. Well, the latest trailer seems to debunk that far-fetched prediction. While Marvel could have made a fake working title, it's unlikely that they will be seen as Avengers, when there's a scene of Valentina directly referencing the need to replace the Avengers with another team. Could it be that they will change their name by the end of the movie? Yes, especially with Bucky and John expressing they dislike the name. And with the overall sentiment being that they don't feel heroic like the Avengers, it's more likely that they'll adopt a name that doesn't reference Earth's mightiest heroes. Another reason for adding an asterisk could be that the team members will change. According to what the trailer implies, Bucky recruits the team in this movie. But what if this specific team disbands by the end of it, and Bucky then needs to assemble a new one? Considering the film includes some characters nobody has missed much so far, it could kill off some of them. There is also the possibility that the asterisk is there simply as a marketing gimmick, meant to spark discussions like this one. It could be rooted in the members' discussion over the name, but ultimately don't mean anything deeper. Either way, we know they are not the Avengers, especially since the release of Captain America: Brave New World last week. In Sam Wilson's first Cap movie, the newly elected president asks him to assemble a new Avengers team. By the end, he's seriously considering it, and his dialogue with Joaquin Torres hints at both Captain America and the Falcon being on the team. It wouldn't make any sense for the Thunderbolts movie to undermine this setup from the Captain America franchise. If anything, it makes more sense for the Thunderbolts to no longer exist at the end of their movie. Characters like Bucky and Yelena could be recruited by Sam to join the Avengers. Bucky's addition to the Avengers would definitely make sense due to his bond with Sam Wilson, and it would be an excellent extension of his journey from Winter Soldier to hero. Similarly, Yelena could honor Natasha by serving a similar role on a new Avengers team. A temporary existence of the team would justify the asterisk, and it also could leave room open for a new version of the Thunderbolts to be formed in the future. In the comics, the Thunderbolts have had many different rosters, and the Thunderbolts could be similar, with many different anti-heroes serving as Thunderbolts on their road to redemption. Since we're talking about Bucky, Yelena, and the movie's marketing, let's address a common complaint about the promotional images and footage. Some fans are worried this movie won't give Bucky the development he deserves, which is understandable considering the character's long history in the MCU, and how he's never had a solo project. The marketing focuses on Yelena, with her being the narrator in the trailers. Scenes like the one where Bucky takes his vibranium arm out of the dishwasher had fans laughing, but also kind of concerned that Bucky would only be there for a few jokes. Bucky appears a little more in the latest trailer, but some fans still fear he will once again be included as a supporting character, continuing to have a slow development in the MCU. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier did give fans some insight as to how Bucky is dealing with returning to the United States. But when it comes to his internal struggles, the series never went beyond a couple of sessions with his psychiatrist. The series focuses more on Sam accepting the Captain America mantle. Well, according to comments made by Sebastian Stan and director Jake Schreier, Thunderbolts is actually shaping up to be Bucky's best character exploration since Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Jake Schreier has said the film will focus on mental health, but not just as a joke. This is huge because Bucky has one of the most complex psychological conflicts in the MCU. While Thunderbolts is indeed going to be a comedy superhero film, it will also explore the mental health of the team members in a thoughtful way, according to the director. Schreier said that he wants fans to come for the dishwasher jokes, but stay for the deep emotional journey when speaking to Empire magazine. The phrase hints at Bucky, in particular, getting some deeper development. Yelena will be a big part of the movie, But we think she has such prominence in the marketing material not only because she is important for the plot, but because highlighting only her keeps the others' journeys more mysterious.
Your subordinates will be reported to DoorDash HQ.
Alexi, it's me. Open up.
Since we are discussing the future of the main characters, who definitely are Bucky Barnes and Yelena Belova, it's also important to debunk a rumor about who dies in this movie. One of the most persistent rumors about the movie is that the entire Thunderbolts team dies by the end of the story. This theory gained traction after insiders' reports alleged that the first draft of the script featured the deaths of all members, and the ending remained the same in the final version. Marvel does take risks sometimes, but it's never so risky that it completely defies the bigger narrative of the franchise. Some members, like John Walker or Ava Star, could die without raising too many complaints among fans and defying the MCU narrative too much. A character like Alexei could also be killed off for being both narratively unimportant and liked enough by the fans to spark an emotional response. But killing Bucky or Yelena doesn't make much sense. Bucky, and Yelena in particular, have been slowly developed for many years now, and have always been headed towards becoming main characters and superheroes. Finally allowing them to be the main characters to instantly kill them off would be incredibly anticlimactic. If it's true that there was once a version of the script in which they all died, we are sure that idea has been scrapped, and at the very least, Bucky and Yelena survive in the end. And our opinion isn't solely based on our faith in the writers. Recently, Sebastian Stan himself made a comment that implied Bucky will survive whatever happens to him in the upcoming movie. In an October 2024 interview with GQ, Stan inadvertently fueled speculation about his character's fate when he expressed his desire to act opposite Robert Downey Jr. When asked about his hopes for Avengers Doomsday, the actor commented on how cool it will be to see Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. He then confessed he would love it if Bucky had at least one scene with Doom in the movie. Maybe in a fight? How could the actor hope to appear in Avengers Doomsday if he knew Bucky died in Thunderbolts? This is probably not a misdirection by Marvel, considering they wouldn't go as far as teasing the inclusion of the Winter Soldier in Doomsday only to hide the spoiler that he dies in Thunderbolts. It's more likely that Stan got excited about Bucky's potential future in the MCU and shared too much. Stan's remarks are particularly significant because they align with the broader trajectory of his character. After years of grappling with his past as a brainwashed assassin for Hydra, Bucky has finally begun to make amends and find a sense of peace in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
And other than that, I just went from one fight to another for 90 years.
However, it's only now in Thunderbolts that he will get some sense of agency and no longer be depicted in the shadow of Captain America. Killing him off immediately after this narrative growth in a movie where he becomes a team leader would feel like a waste of the character's 14 years in the franchise. Bucky's journey from a brainwashed assassin to a redeemed hero has been one of the most compelling arcs in the MCU, and there is still much to explore in terms of how he moves forward with his life. Thunderbolts needs to be just the beginning of a new chapter for him. Killing off the entire Thunderbolts team would not only eliminate a group of fascinating characters too soon, but also deprive the MCU of a unique dynamic between an old-school MCU character like Bucky and a new generation of characters like John Walker and Yelena. Since they will not be dead by the end, the Thunderbolts could join forces with the Avengers to face Dr. Doom in Avengers Doomsday. With a morally ambiguous approach to the problem, the Thunderbolts may represent an important balance to the Avengers' righteousness. We may even see Bucky and Sam Wilson's friendship being tested as the team leaders discuss how to deal with Doom. Marvel Studios would never waste such narrative potential by killing off the characters too soon.
I'll have you know I was actually the official Captain America, so...
Yeah, for like 2 seconds.
Now we want to hear from you. Did you believe any of these lies and rumors? What else would you like to know about the Thunderbolts and their upcoming film? Let us know in the comments below. Welcome to CBR, a vibranium arm and lots of psychological trauma. The Winter Soldier is unmistakable. Today, we are diving into Bucky's origins, both in comics and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Bucky is an iconic anti-hero on screen, paving his way within the MCU franchise to becoming a team leader and main character. But did you know that Bucky Barnes was among the first Marvel superheroes ever created, dating back to when Marvel was still called Timely Comics? James Buchanan Barnes first appeared in Captain America Comics #1, published by Timely Comics in 1941. Created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, The teenager nicknamed Bucky was introduced as a younger sidekick to Steve Rogers during World War II. He was born in 1925 and tragically lost both of his parents around the age of 10. He befriended Steve Rogers in the Army and was later invited by Steve to become Captain America's partner. Curiously, he's one of the very few heroes who doesn't adopt an alias in comics, continuing to go by his nickname. Bucky, by the way, was a very common name at the time. During the golden age of comics, Bucky remained the enthusiastic and brave teenage sidekick to Captain America. They had a relationship similar to Batman and Robin's dynamic, even though their enemies often were much more global threats. Bucky fought alongside Cap against villains like the Nazis, Red Skull, and Baron Zemo, and he also eventually teamed up with other teen heroes as part of the Young Allies, a team comparable to DC's Teen Titans. The Young Allies first appeared in the Captain America comics in May and soon got their own series in July 1941. Bucky was the leader of the team, which also included characters like Toro and Knuckles. Bucky was an important Marvel hero until his death in Avengers Volume 1 Number 4, published in 1964, which turned him into a detail of Steve's past for several decades. At the time, superhero comics were shifting in tone, and the idea of teenage sidekicks began to fall out of fashion. Captain America felt more interesting as the leader of the Avengers, instead of having a younger superhero partner without any powers. Bucky's death also served as a poignant moment in Captain America's journey, as it reinforced the idea that Steve carried a tragic past. He remained dead until 2005, when Marvel radically changed Bucky's story with the Winter Soldier storyline, which started in Captain America Volume 5 Number 11. In it, it's revealed that Bucky had in fact survived his apparent death in that Avengers comic. Making the long dead and forgotten Bucky, the Winter Soldier remains one of the biggest retcons in Marvel history. His sudden return as a hardened assassin with decades of covert operations under his belt brought a dark and complex plot twist. Because it has deeper implications than most other stories of resurrection, Bucky's comeback became one of the most well-received story arcs of modern Marvel comics. In the Winter Soldier storyline, fans learned that Bucky was found without an arm in the ocean by a Soviet Union submarine after falling off a plane that exploded, as they looked for the missing Captain America in the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Bucky was taken and controlled by Department X, a covert Soviet agency that created and trained soldiers and spies. Bucky became the subject of the Winter Soldier project and was given a bionic arm. He had lost his memory, which helped in his transformation into an assassin. During his first years in the Soviet Union, the Winter Soldier became part of the Red Room, another one of Department X's creations. Bucky trained Natasha at the Red Room Academy, and it's revealed how they fell in love in Captain America Volume 5, Number 27 from 2007. The Soviet Union soon recognized Bucky's efficiency, molding him into a perfect human weapon and further manipulating him. As the Winter Soldier, he participated in numerous covert operations during the Cold War, eliminating political targets. One day, after an incident during a mission, Bucky was deemed unstable and put in cryostasis whenever he wasn't needed for a mission, which continued on for decades. He became increasingly ruthless and efficient, with killing and spying becoming all he knew. Bucky ages slowly due to repeated experiments with his body and cryo-freezes orchestrated by the Russians, but they never gave him a super soldier serum in the comics. The Winter Soldier is a brainwashed assassin with a bionic arm, but has no superpowers. The 2005 Winter Soldier storyline tells the story of how Steve Rogers discovers Bucky is alive. With the help of the Cosmic Cube, Cap was able to restore Bucky's memories. The good part is that Bucky reunited not only with Steve, but also with Natasha after regaining his memory. Black Widow assists him as the Winter Soldier and Captain America alongside Falcon and Sharon Carter. But Bucky also had to confront the horrifying things he had done while under Soviet control. Bucky spent some time in hiding, but soon resurfaced to redeem his past. In the 2008 Captain America Volume 5 comics, he became Captain America after he read a letter from Steve that requested he take on the mantle, concluding the Death of Captain America storyline. Bucky Barnes' tenure as Captain America was marked by conflicts with Hydra and Norman Osborn. Once Steve Rogers was resurrected and took back the shield, Bucky went back to using the Winter Soldier alias. After having to fight the sentient cosmic cube known as Kobik in Captain America, Sam Wilson number 7. from 2016, Bucky decided to create a new version of the Thunderbolts team. This team's main objective was to be the guardians of Kobik and to be Earth's last line of defense against alien threats, and includes former villains or morally ambiguous characters like the mercenary Atlas and Abner Jenkins, also known as Mac-1. Beyond the Thunderbolts, the Winter Soldier has continued operating in the Marvel Universe as an independent hero. He remains a critical figure in espionage-related stories, often crossing paths with Black Widow, Nick Fury, and S.H.I.E.L.D. Bucky's redemption arc was carefully crafted over the years, addressing the implications of his past. Unlike other heroes who return from the dead without consequence, Bucky had to struggle to atone for his crimes in what started with one of Marvel's smartest retcons ever. Clearly, the MCU version of Bucky Barnes is not exactly the same as his comics counterpart. His story was heavily based on the 2005 storyline that made Bucky the Winter Soldier for the first time, but a few key elements in the plot are different. Played by Sebastian Stan, the character made his first MCU appearance in the 2011 movie Captain America: The First Avenger. This makes his one of the longest tenures in the MCU, probably only surpassed by Nick Fury's, who's been in the franchise since 2008. While his friendship with Steve starts later on in the comics, the movie made them best friends since childhood. Bucky grew up in Brooklyn and enlisted in the army alongside Steve when World War II broke out. While fighting overseas during the war, Bucky gets captured by Hydra. He's subjected to brutal experiments by scientist Arnim Zola until Steve Rogers rescues him. Back at the Allied base, Bucky once again demonstrates his loyalty to Steve, being proud of his transformation. Once Steve was given the serum and became Captain America, their dynamic shifted. Bucky no longer had to protect Steve, but their bond remained intact. Bucky serves as Steve's emotional anchor before and after his transformation. Bucky shares key intel about Hydra's bases, which helps Rogers and the Howling Commandos launch attacks. During a mission to capture Zola, Bucky is thrown out into a cliff from a moving train. Steve tries to save him, but Bucky falls to what seems like his death. However, Barnes actually survived the fall thanks to the experimentation Zola had performed on him. And it was Hydra who would make use of the man who would come to be known as the Winter Soldier. Instead of the Soviet Union, they found him, wiped his memory, and turned him into their assassin. With a cybernetic left arm and intense brainwashing, he became the Winter Soldier. Over the next several decades, he was responsible for countless assassinations. That includes the murder of Tony Stark's parents in 1991, when the Winter Soldier was sent to steal Howard Stark's latest attempt at the Super Soldier Serum. When Bucky reemerges in Captain America: The Winter Soldier in 2014, he goes head-to-head with Steve Rogers. Zola gave Bucky a serum that made him Hydra's Super Soldier, something the comics also partially retconned in the 2023 Thunderbolts series, by confirming he has enhanced strength due to Soviet experiments. The only problem for Hydra was that Bucky's personality and memories proved difficult to fully suppress. To keep him under control, they used a series of trigger words and put him in cryogenic sleep between missions. However, seeing his childhood friend again created a path back to allow his lost memories to awaken. By the movie's end, Bucky begins to question his identity. Another interesting change to his origins that happens in the MCU is the disconnection between him and Natasha Romanoff. By making Bucky's transformation into the Winter Soldier related to Hydra instead of the Soviet Union, the MCU erased the entire romantic subplot between Bucky and Natasha that started in the Red Room in the comics. But maybe as a nod to their comics history, before Steve finally sees Bucky again, Natasha is the only person who can identify the Winter Soldier. Black Widow had been assigned to protect a scientist who the Winter Soldier killed. He shot the target through Natasha. She survived and tried finding the Winter Soldier to get revenge, but couldn't, not until he resurfaced to kill Nick Fury on a mission orchestrated by Alexander Pierce. Since becoming relatively free of Hydra with the help of Steve, Bucky's trauma and struggle for autonomy started to be emphasized. His following appearances focused particularly in his efforts to resist Hydra's lingering influence and regain his sense of self. Unlike Steve Rogers, who was frozen asleep for decades and suddenly awakened in a modern world, Bucky was forced into a series of traumatizing experiences in between moments of hibernation. He lived through these times under mind control, being unable to process it all, which created deep psychological wounds that would take years to heal. In the 2016 movie Captain America: Civil War, Bucky was a central figure in the conflict between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark when his past actions are revealed, including the murder of Stark's parents. Out in the world, without Hydra programming for the first time, Bucky chose to isolate himself, and Captain America and Falcon tried tracking him down. They finally found him in Bucharest after Bucky had been framed by Zemo for bombing the United Nations building in Vienna, killing King T'Chaka in the process. Bucky still didn't fully remember his life, and suddenly had to deal with T'Chaka's vengeful son, T'Challa, the Black Panther, for a crime he didn't commit. After regaining some of his memories, Barnes joins Captain America against Iron Man and his allies when the two groups divide over whether or not to sign the Sokovia Accords. Zemo reactivated his Winter Soldier programming, forcing him to flee. In the aftermath of that battle, T'Challa and Shuri agreed to help him find a cure for Hydra's brainwashing, giving him a new home in Wakanda. By the end of the movie, Bucky chooses to go into cryogenic sleep in Wakanda until he's able to fully remove Hydra's lingering control over him. Bucky later appears in 2018's Black Panther post-credits scene, when he becomes the White Wolf in Wakanda. During the battle against Thanos in Avengers: Infinity War in 2018, Bucky fights with the forces of Wakanda and other heroes like War Machine, Thor, Rocket, and Groot. Sadly, he was among the people who are wiped from existence when Thanos snapped his fingers using the Infinity Gauntlet. He returned to life in Avengers: Endgame in 2019, fighting in the final battle and later witnessing Steve Rogers' decision to pass on the Captain America mantle to Sam Wilson.
Trainer.
Bucky then finally got a more prominent role in an MCU project in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, released in 2021. The plot focuses on how he actively seeks to make up for his past actions, which leads Bucky to form a partnership with Sam against the Flag Smashers. His relationship with Sam Wilson is one of the most intriguing aspects of his post-Winter Soldier arc. The two clash at first, but over time they develop mutual respect and ultimately a reluctant friendship, coinciding with their team-up in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bucky's cameo in Captain America: Brave New World proves the MCU will keep their friendship strong, as it should be. In the upcoming Thunderbolts movie, Bucky Barnes is set to play a main role as the leader of the team. The Thunderbolts will consist of Yelena Belova, US Agent, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, and Ghost, along with Bucky. And their movie is set to be released on May 2nd, 2025. This version of the team is expected to be a government-backed squad of anti-heroes taking on high-risk missions that the Avengers wouldn't handle. Given Bucky's experience with Black Ops and espionage, he is an ideal leader for this team. His moral nuance and leadership style will likely be major themes in the movie. Thunderbolts offers an opportunity to explore Bucky in a way that he hasn't been fully showcased in the MCU yet, despite the character existing in the franchise for 14 years at this point. It will be exciting to see how he interacts with other morally complex characters and whether he will struggle with old habits as a superhero. This could be the start of a new era for the Winter Soldier, in which he manages to reconnect with his original personality. He will never go back to being exactly like the enthusiastic young man from Captain America: The First Avenger, just like he can never have his original innocence again in the comics since the Winter Soldier retcon. But now it's time for Bucky to overcome Hydra's manipulation completely and finally feel some sense of agency. By assembling the Thunderbolts, he may regain some of the optimism he had back when he enlisted in the army during World War II. Bucky is beloved by MCU fans, who are eager to see him take on a bigger role in the franchise with the upcoming movie.
And you are gonna help me stop it.
Wait, us?
Yeah, you. Why, you got someplace to be?
I love that guy.
Today on CBR, we review the evolution of the Marvel character Yelena Belova in both the MCU and in Marvel Comics. Let's get started. Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, burst onto the MCU scene in Black Widow 2021, quickly winning over fans with her sarcastic humor, badass combat skills, and tragic backstory. But Yelena's journey in the MCU isn't just about fighting bad guys, it's about her growth from a brainwashed assassin to a more complicated, multi-dimensional character in the Marvel Universe. In the MCU, Yelena is a product of the Red Room, a secret Russian program that trains young girls to become lethal spies and assassins. She's Natasha Romanoff's, Scarlett Johansson's sister, in the sense that they were both taken as children and trained to be weapons for the Soviet government. However, Yelena's exposure to Natasha's family isn't the same as Natasha's. Yelena wasn't raised with her, so she's got a different emotional baggage to work through. In Black Widow, Yelena starts off as a skilled operative working for the government, but she's not just another mindless assassin. When Natasha and Yelena reunite after years apart, we get to see the depth of their bond. They weren't really raised as family, but they still shared a connection that only those from the same messed up system could understand. Yelena's journey in the movie isn't just about fighting her old captors, it's about confronting the lies she was told and taking back control of her life. After Black Widow, Yelena's character takes a wild turn in Hawkeye, 2021. Now, she's back in the picture after being snapped out of existence by the blip, only to find out that Natasha died in Avengers Endgame, 2019. Yelena's immediate response? Vengeance. She thinks Clint Barton, Jeremy Renner, is the one who killed her sister, so she goes after him with all the fury and determination you'd expect from a trained killer with a vendetta. She's not just a villain though, Yelena is layered, and her desire for revenge is as much about dealing with grief as it is about justice. What makes her so interesting is that by the end of Hawkeye, Yelena evolves. She's not just a vengeful assassin. She starts to see the bigger picture. The pivotal moment happens when Clint explains the true nature of Natasha's sacrifice. Yelena's anger starts to fade, replaced by understanding. This shift in Yelena's character arc sets up the possibility of her moving beyond her past and taking on a new role in the MCU. She goes from an anti-hero to someone who could potentially join forces with the good guys, or at least someone who's no longer blindly following orders. Yelena Belova was first introduced in Incredible Hulk number 443 in 1996, created by writer Devin Grayson and artist J.G. Jones. Unlike her MCU counterpart, who was portrayed as a younger sister figure to Natasha Romanoff, the comic version of Yelena was presented as a direct replacement for Natasha in the Russian government's Black Widow program, a secret training facility dedicated to turning women into deadly spies and assassins. Yelena's background in the comics wasn't marked by an emotional bond with Natasha, but rather by an intense rivalry. In the comics, Yelena's ambitions are clear from the beginning. She wants to be the true Black Widow, surpassing Natasha in both skill and status. This sets her up as an antagonist and a foil to Natasha. She sees herself as a more ruthless and determined operative, believing that Natasha's moral compass and her eventual defection to the West made her weak and unfit to carry the mantle. Yelena, on the other hand, has no such qualms, and her devotion to her country and her mission makes her a much colder, more calculating character. In her early comic appearances, Yelena's primary goal was to defeat Natasha and take over her role as the ultimate Black Widow, both in terms of skill and influence. This rivalry is central to her comic persona and defines much of her early appearances. Unlike in the MCU, where Yelena has a more complex emotional arc and eventually works alongside Natasha to destroy the Red Room, comic Yelena is much more focused on winning and proving herself superior to the original Black Widow. Yelena's journey as a Black Widow in the comics is marked by her dedication to the Soviet cause, while Natasha Romanoff's path to becoming the Black Widow was tangled with espionage, defection, and eventual redemption. Yelena's journey was more straightforward. She was trained to be the Black Widow from the start. She was subjected to intense physical and psychological conditioning. And unlike Natasha, who was manipulated by the KGB and later rebelled against her handlers, Yelena had no qualms about serving the Soviet state. One of the most important storylines in Yelena's comic history is her role in the Black Widow 2001 miniseries, where she's sent to kill Natasha. After a brutal confrontation, Natasha survives, but the battle makes it clear that Yelena is a fierce adversary. Her primary motivation is rooted in a sense of duty, and she is portrayed as cold and pragmatic, not swayed by emotions or morality. However, it's in this arc that Yelena's depth as a character starts to show. While initially appearing as a simple rival, she begins to develop a more nuanced perspective, and by the end of her first major story arc, there's a sense that she's more than just a puppet of the Russian government. Yelena Belova, whether in the MCU or the comics, is a character defined by her complicated relationships, loyalty, and thirst for revenge. These motivations drive pretty much everything she does, and they play a huge role in why she's destined to join the Thunderbolts, a team made up of anti-heroes, former villains, and complicated folks looking to find a new path. Let's break down what fuels Yelena in both universes and how those motivations push her toward the Thunderbolts. In the comics, Yelena's motivations are much more centered on her duty to her country and proving herself superior to Natasha. When she first appeared in Incredible Hulk number 443, 1996, Yelena was a product of the Red Room's next generation, an assassin trained to take the Black Widow mantle. Unlike the MCU, where Yelena has a complicated, almost sisterly relationship with Natasha, the comic version is laser-focused on beating Natasha and taking her place as the true Black Widow. Her motivations here are pretty clear. She's driven by a sense of loyalty to the Soviet government and an intense desire to prove she's the better Black Widow. When Yelena was brought to the MCU, her character underwent some significant changes, making her a much more layered and emotionally complex figure than her comic book counterpart. In the MCU, her first appearance is in Black Widow, and while she is still a product of the Red Room, her relationship with Natasha is central to her arc. Instead of simply wanting to defeat Natasha and claim the Black Widow title for herself, Yelena is presented as Natasha's sister, a fellow assassin who is manipulated and controlled by the same system. Yelena's MCU backstory is far more emotionally driven than her comic origins. She's initially introduced as a loyal agent of the Red Room, but upon reuniting with Natasha, Yelena comes to understand the trauma of her past and begins to grapple with her identity. This is a stark contrast to her comic book counterpart, who never really shows that level of vulnerability or connection with her fellow Black Widow. In the MCU, Yelena's bond with Natasha becomes a key part of her journey, especially after Natasha's death in Avengers Endgame. The tragic loss of her sister propels Yelena into a more conflicted, emotionally grounded place in Hawkeye, which is something her comic version never had the chance to explore. Yelena's quest for vengeance against Clint Barton, whom she mistakenly blames for Natasha's death, continues to highlight the emotional complexity of her character. She's not just a mindless assassin anymore. She's a person dealing with grief and looking for a way to navigate her newfound freedom after the Red Room's influence has ended. This isn't just about revenge, though. It's about trying to understand Natasha's choice and find some kind of closure. Yelena's journey is a mix of anger, confusion, and healing as she tries to navigate her place in the world without her sister. When Yelena was first introduced in the MCU, she was very much an anti-hero. Her motivations were initially driven by a sense of duty and loyalty to the program, but that loyalty was tested when she reunited with her sister, Natasha Romanoff. The bond between the two women led Yelena to question everything she had been taught, setting her on a path of personal growth and self-discovery. While Yelena in the comics is a more traditional rival to Natasha with clear antagonistic goals, the MCU's Yelena is a character defined by her emotional journey and growth. The MCU has taken a character who was originally an enemy and turned her into a potential hero, one who seeks closure, understanding, and a chance to forge her own path outside the Red Room's control. This character arc is what makes Yelena a perfect fit for the Thunderbolts, a team of morally gray characters who have all been shaped by their complicated pasts. Yelena's emotional journey is far from over, and joining the Thunderbolts could give her a new family. These people, while not perfect, could offer her the sense of belonging and purpose that she's been seeking. It's not about being a mindless weapon anymore, it's about carving out her own destiny. Yelena's transition from anti-hero to team player is rooted in her growing understanding of the value of family, trust, and collaboration. In Black Widow, Natasha's influence on Yelena was key to her emotional journey. Natasha taught her that there is more to life than being a weapon, something Yelena had to unlearn. By the time she appears in Hawkeye, Yelena is no longer operating as a lone assassin. Instead, she's someone who is learning to process her grief and anger in a healthier way, leading her to the realization that working with others can be a path to healing. By the time she appears in Hawkeye, Yelena is still grappling with Natasha's death and her desire for revenge against Clint Barton. Her single-minded pursuit of vengeance is personal and raw, but over the course of the show, she begins to evolve. She starts to see the bigger picture, realizing that Natasha's sacrifice was for the greater good. This moment of clarity marks a turning point for Yelena. She moves away from being a vengeful anti-hero and toward a more complex, morally nuanced character. She's no longer just a weapon of vengeance, she's someone who can think beyond her own pain. This shift in mindset makes her an ideal fit for the Thunderbolts. The team consists of characters like Bucky Barnes, John Walker, U.S. Agent, and Taskmaster, individuals with complex, often morally questionable pasts. What makes the Thunderbolts work as a team is that they are united by their shared experiences of being misused, manipulated, or betrayed by larger systems. Yelena fits perfectly into this dynamic. She knows what it's like to be used as a pawn, and her experiences make her both sympathetic and highly valuable to the team. Yelena is not just an emotionally complex character, she's also one of the most skilled operatives in the MCU. Trained as a Black Widow, she possesses extraordinary combat abilities, sharp intellect, and a ruthless efficiency that makes her a powerful asset. Her background as a highly trained assassin means she can hold her own in battle and take on dangerous missions. However, what sets her apart from others in the Thunderbolts is her emotional intelligence and her ability to connect with others. Although Yelena doesn't always show it, her interactions with other team members have the potential to foster trust and unity. Her emotional growth, learning to care, to trust, and to fight for something bigger than herself makes her not only a strong fighter, but also a natural leader. Her path from anti-hero to team player mirrors the larger theme of the Thunderbolts: redemption and the possibility of change. One of the key sources of conflict for Yelena will be her struggle with trust. In the MCU, she spent much of her life manipulated by the Red Room, and even after the loss of Natasha, her emotional baggage is heavy. Joining the Thunderbolts, a group of former villains, means she'll have to grapple with working alongside others who are, in some ways, just as broken as she is. Characters like John Walker, U.S. Agent, have their own dark pasts, which could lead to moments of tension with Yelena, especially since she's been burned by betrayal before. This wariness could be compounded by the fact that Valentina Allegra de Fontaine has lied to Yelena before, specifically about Clint Barton's role in Natasha's death. While Valentina later claimed that the mission was a test, Yelena could still have her doubts about Valentina's intentions, which could spill over into her interactions with her teammates. However, Yelena could also find a kindred spirit in Bucky Barnes. Like Yelena, Bucky was forced to work as the Winter Soldier through complex manipulation and training, and he's also trying to find his own way free of Hydra's control. Bucky's experiences could put him into a mentorship role for Yelena. Similarly, Ava Star, also known as Ghost, had a similar childhood to Yelena. After an accident killed her parents, Ava was trained by S.H.I.E.L.D. to go on missions due to her quantum powers, but cast aside later on. Ava also has the added trauma of her powers being unmanageable and slowly killing her for years. The two women could bond over their similar histories, forming a tight core of friendship for the Thunderbolts team. Yelena's motivations will also evolve as she processes Natasha's death. This could lead her to explore themes of redemption, both for herself and the team. As she grows, Yelena might take on a more leadership-oriented role, trying to guide the Thunderbolts toward finding their own moral compass. In the comics, Yelena was often driven by duty and a need to prove herself, so we can expect similar themes to surface in her MCU storyline. However, the team dynamic will force her to reconsider her approach, perhaps teaching her the value of collaboration and trust. Ultimately, Yelena's future in the Thunderbolts is full of potential for conflict, growth, and emotional depth, making her a super interesting and key figure to watch. From her origins in the Red Room to her current state of independence and self-awareness, Yelena is one of the most dynamic characters to emerge in recent Marvel films, and her journey is just getting started. We can't wait to see what she does next. What are your thoughts on Yelena Belova? Do you prefer her MCU or Marvel Comics version? Tell us in the comments, and remember to subscribe. Thanks for watching CBR. Welcome to CBR. Robert Reynolds, the Sentry and the Void, will become a part of the MCU with the upcoming Thunderbolts movie this year. Today, let's see how much you know about his origins in Marvel Comics. Bob, as he introduces himself in the trailer for Thunderbolts, he is an extremely powerful character in the Marvel Universe, first appeared in his own comic series, Sentry #1, published in 2000, but everyone completely forgot about his existence. Do you know why? In 1947, a few years after Steve Rogers took the super soldier serum that turned him into Captain America, a group of scientists started working on a stronger serum in what was called Project Sentry. This initiative was a collaboration between Canada's Department K and the United States Operation Rebirth. The goal was to make a hero at least 1,000 times more powerful than Captain America, someone with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. Robert Reynolds was a young man struggling with substance abuse who broke into a lab one day looking for his next high. He stole and consumed the golden Sentry serum, which gave him extreme powers such as molecule manipulation. In fact, the molecules of his body themselves became slightly out of sync with reality, which enhanced every natural ability imaginable and gave him some unique superhuman features. In a 2010 storyline from the Dark Avengers series, it's revealed that Bob killed his friend and the lab's guards when he exploded like 1,000,000 suns, and that he later returned to the lab to ask the scientist responsible to make more of the serum for him. This addictive side to Bob's personality is what first awakens and feeds the void. However, Bob is a good guy, deep down. Once he saw himself holding such impressive power, he immediately leaned towards helping people, ushering in a new era of superheroes. After being mutated by the serum into one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, the Sentry fought against villains alongside the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and the X-Men. He quickly deduced Spider-Man's secret identity and became a role model for Peter Parker. Super intelligent since taking the serum, Bob was an equal to Reed Richards and they became best friends. He even fought Dr. Doom with the Fantastic Four a few times since 2001's The Sentry, Fantastic Four. During his time as a hero, he also recruited a young sidekick called Billy Turner, also known as Scout, and he established a headquarters in Manhattan known as the Watchtower. It was also during this time working as a superhero that Bob encountered his worst enemy, the Void, who debuted making many victims in a fatal attack he orchestrated in New York. While the origin of the Sentry is pretty clear, the comics don't fully clarify how the Void came to existence. In Dark Avengers, it's presumed that the Void is an evil cosmic entity who bonded with Bob Reynolds when he took the Golden Sentry serum. We do know that the villainous illusionist mastermind has facilitated the awakening of the Void through the implantation of a mental virus in Bob's mind, which was ordered by another villain, the General in New Avengers number 10. When Bob realized that the Void was a dark alter ego of the Sentry, embodying all of his tragic characteristics, he worked with Reed Richards and Doctor Strange to erase his own existence from the world. While carrying the Void highlights the darkness within Bob, his selfless sacrifice to save the world from the Void also emphasizes how good the Sentry is. We've seen Doctor Strange erase people's memories of Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home, but what the Sentry did was much more extreme. Bob became unknown even to himself, forgetting all about his own history as a hero. In the 2001 series, The Sentry vs. the Void, we read about how Bob's memories started slowly returning around the time he reached middle age. This allowed the Void to come out, and Bob had to restore everyone's memory. He later erased himself from the world once again in the 2005 New Avengers era, considering it the only way to keep the Void dormant. However, subconsciously, Bob transferred his mind into the comic book writer Paul Jenkins, who wrote books based on the Sentry's repressed memories. By the way, Jenkins' cameo in New Avengers number 7 to number 10 is one of the greatest uses of meta-narrative in the history of Marvel. It was only when Emma Frost of the X-Men helped him that Bob was able to fully recover his lost memories and make the Void disappear for a while, which also happened in this New Avengers series. The Sentry was once again seen as a superhero, and the Stark Tower was turned into his old Watchtower in New Avengers number 10. At this point, the Sentry joined the Avengers. The New Avengers from 2004 Marvel Comics included Captain America, Iron Man, Luke Cage, the Sentry, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and Wolverine. After the Sentry sided with Tony Stark during the Avengers Civil War, he joined Iron Man's government-sanctioned Avengers team in 2007's Mighty Avengers number 1. While he thought the Void to be gone since Emma Frost's telepathic help, it was in the second Sentry series, Sentry Volume 2, that Bob managed to fully face the nature of his alter ego. With the help of a psychologist, he was able to identify the root of his attachment to the entity and seemingly kill the Void by throwing him into the sun. However, of course, he wasn't dead. The Void resurfaced in the Dark Avengers era. Norman Osborn manipulated the Sentry into joining his Dark Avengers team, then gave him more of the Golden Sentry serum to hook the Void. Bob became increasingly controlled by the Void, who in turn obeyed Norman Osborn. When Osborn launched an attack on the Asgardians, the Void destroyed Asgard and killed Ares, the god of war. After battling against Thor and the Avengers, Bob resurfaced from within the void and asked his friends to kill him. They initially refused, but Thor apparently killed the Sentry when the void came back. Thor threw the Sentry into the sun to keep his body from regenerating in the Siege series. Yes, once again, it was only an apparent death, and Bob returned. He was resurrected by Uriel and Iman, who are known as the Apocalypse Twins, to be their new Horsemen of Death in 2012's Uncanny Avengers number 9. Doctor Strange helped Bob overcome the influence of the Apocalypse Twins by creating a pocket dimension inside Bob's mind called Sentry World. This plan worked really well until the Sentry's old sidekick Scout invaded Sentry World to steal Bob's power. In retaliation, the Sentry bonded with the Void and killed Scout in the 2018 Sentry comics. Reed Richards then advised Bob to go into the Negative Zone to detach from the Void. The Negative Zone is an antimatter dimension that has existed in Fantastic Four stories since 1966. When the Sentry and the Void separated in the Negative Zone, the Void traveled to a new location of the Marvel multiverse. Earth 10,011, also known as the Cancerverse, is the House of the Scourge, a group of villains whose leader is the Void. In the 2019 Annihilation Scourge event, the Sentry briefly bonded with the Silver Surfer to stop an invasion led by the Void. But the only way to get some control over the Void was to make him bond with the Sentry again. The Void remained a part of the Sentry until his encounter with Null in the recent King in Black event. The creator of the symbiotes split Bob's body in half and completely absorbed the Void, which makes sense considering the Void probably came from Null's realm of nothingness. In fact, Null often refers to himself as the Void. The Sentry's alter ego could be a fraction of Null or of the Abyss from which he comes from. In response, Mayor Fisk assembled a new Thunderbolts team to retrieve both parts of the Sentry's body ripped in half. Fisk had hopes of using Bob's body as a bomb against Null, who was invading New York City. Then, the Sentry's corpse was acquired by the Blasphemy Cartel to be used as a vessel for 100 million insane ghosts. The Sentry was last seen in 2023, with Jane Foster taking Bob's soul to the afterlife, while Sorcerer Supreme Clea and Doctor Strange shielded his corpse from being invaded by other spirits or used for any evil motives. The Sentry comics were softly rebooted at this point, and the next series goes on to establish a new character who uses the alias. After Robert Reynolds died, ordinary people all over the world began to suddenly manifest his powers and experience snippets of his memories in Sentry Volume 4, Number 1. Ryan Topper emerged as the new Sentry, using the name Ryan Sentry, and started absorbing other individuals who demonstrated Sentry-like powers. So Bob is currently dead in Marvel Comics. But knowing how they work, we wouldn't be surprised if Marvel still finds a way to resurrect the character in the future. The lingering presence of the Sentry, even after Null destroyed him, completely attests to his unique position within the Marvel Universe. This influence hints at the character coming back, especially considering how brief his tenure was in the end when compared to heroes like the Fantastic Four, who have been around and prominent since the 1960s. That's a very complex story, don't you think? Let's leave Ryan's Sentry to be discussed in another video and rewind things a bit to better understand who Robert Reynolds was. We've just gone through exactly how the character was included in the Marvel Universe, but do you know just how powerful the Sentry is and how much his powers evolved in time? Saying someone is godlike or has the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns is pretty abstract. Let's quantify Sentry's powers in ways that are easier to understand. The Golden Sentry serum is a lot different from the Super Soldier serum. It creates a phase shift in his molecules, causing the Sentry to become partially out of sync with reality. Sentry's acquired molecular nature allows him to warp reality and reach a hyper state of consciousness. The serum enhanced all of his human abilities like speed and strength and gave him a vast set of superhuman powers. Bob was a smart guy, but the serum gave him a genius intelligence. He became an expert in many fields, including mechanics and architecture, which helped him build the Watchtower himself. Beyond superhuman strength, agility, speed, reflexes, and stamina, the Sentry also has enhanced senses. He's able to detect something from hundreds of miles and from above cloud level. He can completely defy gravity at will, floating or flying at whatever speed he wishes, including the speed of light. On one occasion, he has also shown an ability to teleport in New Avengers Volume 1, Number 8. The Sentry is essentially indestructible unless he wishes to die. He survives in extreme atmospheric conditions and vacuum. He doesn't need to eat, sleep, or use the bathroom, being entirely self-sustainable. He doesn't age, never becomes ill, and has an extremely powerful healing factor. He is healed from a bullet to the head and from the Molecule Man turning him into liquid in Dark Avengers Volume 1, number 10 to 13. Unlike the Molecule Man, the Sentry doesn't have full control of his reality warping abilities, but even limited, he's still nearly omnipotent. He can build various constructs of matter or light, and even create sentient beings by rearranging molecules. This power to rearrange living cells also works in mysterious ways, like when Bob spontaneously cured a girl in a vegetative state in Sentry Volume 2, number 6 to 8. He can even resurrect himself and others, though not at will. That's already a lot of power, right? But it doesn't stop there. Since he controls light, he can turn invisible. The Sentry absorbs energy from anything to boost his powers, but his main source of energy is the sun. And just like he absorbs, he can also share energy from his body. He can pass part of his powers to other people or enhance their natural ones. He can also access people's minds in various degrees, not always at will. He can calm down the Hulk back to being Bruce Banner, and he can transfer his memories to other people. He has almost no weakness, although the existence of the Void itself weakens him. Since the Sentry ultimately merged with the Void, he became even stronger, to the point of being considered the most powerful superhuman on Earth, as seen in Sentry Volume 3. Since he manipulates matter, the Sentry is only vulnerable to antimatter. This means he is the weakest when he is in the negative zone. With so much power, Marvel had to limit the Sentry somehow, and his lack of control over his own powers was a great way to do it. Now you're probably wondering, how will all of this comics history fit into the MCU? From the Thunderbolts footage released so far, we know Bob is found in a lab. It seems like his origin story as an addict who takes the wrong drug when breaking in will stay the same. The Thunderbolts' first mission may be checking out a break-in, leading them to Bob. Having just taken the Golden Sentry serum, he won't be able to control his powers. A plot theory for the movie is that the team fights Bob as he turns into both the Sentry and the Void. After regaining self-control, he erases his existence from Earth by the end. Another possibility is that Thunderbolts is set long after Bob took the serum, and it starts with everyone already having forgotten he exists and now needing to remember. Either way, one thing that fans do hope to see is the Sentry becoming a member of the Avengers after this encounter with the Thunderbolts. The Sentry is such an interesting character in the Marvel lexicon that it seems like such a shame to kill him off after only one project, right? As we've mentioned, Bob was in the Avengers for a long time in Marvel Comics. He may be introduced battling the Void in Thunderbolts, but we think he should return later to face other cosmic-level threats. He could go up against Doctor Doom and even Galactus. It's probable that the MCU will explore the idea of the Sentry gradually recovering his memories. The Void, however, can always be used as a narrative reason to take the Sentry off the franchise at any point. Having a vulnerable state of mind, we could see Bob being manipulated into the Void by Valentina in Thunderbolts, and later again by Doctor Doom. There's also speculation that Marvel might edit Bob's powers to fit within the current MCU power levels. While the comics portray him as virtually omnipotent, the movies may introduce a limitation or weakness to keep things more balanced. For example, instead of consuming more serum than he needed to due to his addiction, Bob could need to keep taking the serum to keep his strength.
I'm Bob.
Who sent you, Bob?
Nobody. You were all sent?
The Thunderbolts film is a defining moment for the MCU, setting up the future of the franchise. People have grown complacent, and Captain America hasn't quite reinvigorated interests. Who knows if this Thunderbolts film can do any better? Will the Sentry make a difference? Regardless of how Marvel adapts him, the Sentry's debut could change everything. What do you think? Should the Sentry be a major player in more projects of the multiverse saga, or should he remain a one-off character in Thunderbolts? Let us know in the comments below. Welcome to CBR. From the Red Room to the Thunderbolts, the journey of Taskmaster in the MCU is unpredictable since her counterpart in comics has a completely different story. Today, let's deep dive into Taskmaster in both comics and movies. The Taskmaster in Marvel Comics has a lot of similarities and a lot of differences with its MCU counterpart. The most obvious contrast between them is the character's gender, with Marvel Studios transforming Tony Masters into Antonia Draov. Tony first appeared in Avengers number 195, published in 1980, as a new supervillain. In this story, he fights the Avengers, with a final battle against Iron Man and Captain America. In Avengers number 196, the heroes were shocked to learn Taskmaster could counter any move by Captain America, who is the most skilled fighter in the Avengers. Taskmaster not only made a strong first impression because of his superpower of mirroring others, but also because of his tactical mind. He is depicted as a mastermind behind elaborate attacks and running a school for supervillains. In the comics, Tony Masters is from the Bronx and was born with a unique skill. His origin story is revealed in the Taskmaster series from 2002, which depicts how Tony had an enhanced form of photographic memory and reflexes since childhood. Taskmaster number 4 shows that at the age of 8, Tony could immediately copy professional athletes and perform any action he saw others do on TV. But that is not the only power that makes up Taskmaster. He also took the super soldier serum. Tony Masters used to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. One day, during a mission, a dying scientist gave him the Nazi version of the super soldier serum. Tony injected himself with it and gained the enhanced strength and endurance of the serum. However, Taskmaster Volume 2 Number 3 revealed that the effect the serum had on his brain was not good. It made his personal memories to be erased little by little, overwritten with his photographic learning of the movement of others. As a result, Tony forgot his entire life, including his wife and field agent partner Mercedes Masters. Mercedes crafted the Taskmaster persona and the Org, the main source of the Taskmaster's jobs. She controlled the Org, keeping the memoryless Tony constantly working as a double agent in the supervillain world. She would keep him occupied as a mercenary for the Org, unaware of his own role, while she gathered intelligence for S.H.I.E.L.D. But Taskmaster evolved to become important in the supervillain world, training others in his school for criminals, the Solomon Institute for the Criminally Insane. He was able to deconstruct the fighting styles of superheroes and world-famous martial artists in detail, making Taskmaster the perfect teacher. And a hidden secret in Marvel Comics that most fans don't know is that Taskmaster was also a private instructor for John Walker when he was training to become the new Captain America, as shown in Captain America number 334 in 1987. Over time, Taskmaster made an ever bigger career as a mercenary than a teacher. He often crossed paths with other mercenaries like Deadpool and was hired to take down superheroes like Moon Knight. Taskmaster was never a member of the Thunderbolts, but he was briefly detained by them once. We will get into another team he was a part of later in the video, but let's follow the chronology. A major event in the comics in which Taskmaster appears in The Siege. During Norman Osborn's Dark Reign era, villains orchestrated an attack on Asgard. Taskmaster fought on Norman Osborn's side with the Dark Avengers against Thor and the Asgardians, as seen in Avengers The Initiative number 35, 2010. After the end of the Dark Reign, Taskmaster was approached by S.H.I.E.L.D. to join the Secret Avengers team after being rescued by Nick Fury Jr. from criminals of Bagalia. His first mission was to join the AEM High Council as a double agent. While trying to rescue Bobby Morse from captivity, he was shot and believed to be dead. The Secret Avengers left his body behind, but Marvin Flum, the supervillain Mentallo, found Tony Masters alive. Mentallo kept his survival a secret and rehabilitated Masters using nanotechnology. Although his time with the Secret Avengers was brief and not a redemption arc, it may have influenced Marvel Studios' decision to make Taskmaster a member of the Thunderbolts in the MCU. After that, Tony Masters made a comeback in the Secret Empire arc, working for Baron Zemo. He was a member of Hydra's Avengers alongside Black Ant, who became Taskmaster's best friend, as seen in Secret Empire number 1-8, 2017. Then, after the fall of Hydra and the end of the Secret Empire, Taskmaster went back to working as mercenary. His latest appearances happened in Spider-Man comics. Taskmaster and Black Ant were once hired by Kraven to capture animal-related criminals, and Kraven manipulated Taskmaster into betraying his friend. Although Tony Master remains a villain, he proved to have a heart when he double-crossed Kraven and saved his friend in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 23, 2019. Now that we have gone through the character's origin and history in Marvel Comics, let's quickly break down Taskmaster's abilities to understand his translation to the MCU. Tony injected himself with an experimental Nazi version of the super soldier serum, which was a modification of the adrenal steroid cortisol. The serum altered his brain chemistry, enhancing his short-term memory in detriment of his long-term memory. Prior to becoming a super soldier, Tony had already acquired deep muscle memory from having spent his entire life with photographic reflexes. Although he could no longer remember past events of his life, his body continued to be able to mimic any movement and to become stronger thanks to uninterrupted training. Taskmaster became known as one of the greatest formidable armed and unarmed combatants in the Marvel Universe. But his innate power extends beyond battle, as it also makes him a proficient polyglot who speaks at least 8 languages fluently. However, his altered brain chemistry often proves to be a weakness. His lack of long-term memory and the growth of his amnesia with the usage of his mirroring superpower can make him susceptible to manipulation. To counter that, Taskmaster wears a skull-shaped helmet that helps block telepathic attacks, as shown in Taskmaster Volume 3, Number 3, 2021. And there is also a clear limit to Taskmaster's mirroring. He can only duplicate someone else's moves as far as Taskmaster himself is able to go. For example, he can move as fast as Captain America, but could never run at the same speed as Quicksilver. This limitation inspired Taskmaster to use specific weapons that help him to duplicate what characters with specific powers do. To mimic Wolverine, for instance, Taskmaster uses artificial claws in Agent X, number 15, 2003. He has used comparable gadgets in many instances, like energy web throwers to mimic Spider-Man, like bow and arrow to mimic Hawkeye, and a shield to mimic Captain America. In case you're only familiar with the Taskmaster from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you may be wondering if we are even talking about the same character. In the MCU, Antonia Draov was born in Russia. She is the daughter of General Draov, the evil mastermind behind the Red Room. The only MCU project in which Antonia has appeared so far is the 2021 movie Black Widow. While young girls like Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova were shipped to the Red Room, trained to become assassins and mind-controlled, Antonia was raised as a regular girl in Budapest. When Natasha started working for S.H.I.E.L.D., she had to kill General Draov. Black Widow and Hawkeye planted a bomb in Dracov's office in Budapest, and Antonia was apparently also killed in the explosion, which haunted Natasha for years. But Draov and his daughter both survived the attack, actually. To stop Antonia's agonizing pain, Draov had doctors insert a chip into her brain that dulled her senses and gave her father the ability to control her like a video game. This is when Draov sent his own daughter to the Red Room, from which she emerged the most skilled assassin possible, learning to perfectly mimic the other Black Widows thanks to her brain chip's technology. To become a weapon against Dracov's enemies, Taskmaster would watch footage of the Avengers in combat and study their fighting styles. Meanwhile, Yelena Belova was still a Black Widow, working for the Red Room. During a mission to kill Oksana, one of the widows who had escaped the Red Room, Yelena came into contact with the Red Dust, a chemical compound in gas form that awakens people from mind control when inhaled. Yelena suddenly realized she had just killed Oksana, someone who was her friend in the Red Room. In her last breath, Oksana told Yelena to free the others, and gave her the vials of red dust she was transporting. The red dust became a pivotal part of Black Widow and Antonia's story. Yelena then sent the vials to Natasha, believing that her adoptive sister would have better means to protect the substance since she is an Avenger. Natasha was hiding in Norway when the package was delivered, but she was actually unaware she was in possession of the red dust until the mysterious Taskmaster showed up and tried taking it away. Black Widow is one of the most skilled fighters in the MCU, so she was shocked to see this masked attacker could mirror her movements with precision, making the fight much harder. Natasha was able to get away with the red dust after a tiring battle, and met up with Yelena in Budapest when she learned the full scope of the situation. This is when Natasha realizes she never killed Draov. Taskmaster and the Black Widows quickly found Natasha and Yelena in Budapest, and they started chasing the duo around the city, trying to recuperate the red dust. They managed to escape, but were soon found again by Taskmaster when they visited their adoptive mother, Malina Vostokov. The family was reunited after Natasha and Yelena broke Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian, and their adoptive father out of jail. They went to see Malina, unaware she would contact Taskmaster. Taskmaster took Natasha, Yelena, and Alexei as prisoners. However, Natasha managed to escape and infiltrate herself into the Red Room, posing as Malina using a photostatic veil. a mask made with nanotechnology that is capable of replicating an individual's face and voice. Natasha confronted Dreykov, planning to kill him. Antonia was in the room and immediately drew her gun to protect her father. At this point, Natasha was still unaware that Taskmaster was Antonia, the little girl she thought she had killed along with General Dreykov. Upon revealing the Taskmaster's identity, Dreykov also admitted that he was disgusted and embarrassed by his daughter's burns from the explosion, which was why he kept her identity hidden behind her helmet. Father of the Year, right? As Natasha talked to Dreykov, Melina, Alexei, and Yelena worked together to sabotage the Red Room. Melina had betrayed them, but her former family eventually managed to bring her back from the mind control. Dreykov sent Taskmaster to kill the prisoners, and she fought the Red Guardian using claws and movements based on footage of Black Panther fighting she had seen. But midway through the fight, Taskmaster would switch tactics and employ methods learned from other fighters. She used her shield like Captain America, and knife attacks copied from the Winter Soldier. Taskmaster nearly won the battle against the Red Guardian, but Melina managed to throw her into a cell and lock her inside before it was too late. After the unconventional family managed to destroy the Red Room, Natasha found Antonia in that same cell Melina had put her in.
Antonia.
Although Antonia would attack her, Natasha chose to free her instead of continuing to carry the guilt of having killed her. Before Taskmaster could attack and kill Natasha, an explosion caused the ceiling between them to collapse. They eventually battled on top of the debris from the destroyed floating station of the Red Room as it fell from the sky. Natasha did not want to kill or harm Antonia, and she was only able to stop the determined Taskmaster when her helmet fell off, and Natasha could break a red dust vial on her face. Awakening from Dreykov's mind control, Antonia quit attacking and realized her father was dead. With the Red Room destroyed, the freed Black Widows gathered and escaped together before the authorities could find them. They took Antonia in as one of them. And this is where Taskmaster's character arc in the MCU is at the moment, and where the upcoming Thunderbolts will pick things up. But before we discuss her role on Marvel's new team of anti-heroes, let's recap just how different Taskmaster is in Marvel Comics. Tony Masters is not just a male version of Taskmaster, or Antonia is the female version. They each have their own unique story. Tony is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. spy who turns into a supervillain who trains other villains, and a mercenary who kills for money. He never had any redemption, other than briefly being a secret Avenger and a good friend to Black Ant. In parallel, Antonia is not an American and has never worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. She spent most of her life in the Red Room working for her father, following the explosion set up by Black Widow, which almost killed Antonia, a completely different origin story and journey. Tony's ability to mirror others is a superpower from birth, but his memory struggles are a result of him taking an experimental version of the super soldier serum made by the Nazis. Instead of having an innate superpower and taking the serum like Tony, Antonia had surgery to cut the pain receptors in her brain and had a chip implanted there. The chip gave her the ability to mimic what she saw, but also stripped her of her free will. While Tony Masters is the villain who trained John Walker in Marvel Comics, Antonia Dreykov and John Walker, already acting as US agent, will cross paths for the first time in the upcoming movie Thunderbolts as members of the same team. From villain to member of the Thunderbolts, Antonia Dreykov is carving her space in the MCU. With such a contrasting trajectory in comparison to Tony Masters in comics, her future in the franchise is an enticing mystery at the moment. Since coming into contact with the red dust and being freed from her father's control, Antonia has probably struggled to adapt to a new life. The last time she lived a normal life, she was only a child, and she may not even remember any of that due to all the manipulation of her brain chemistry. The upcoming movie will probably reveal she has stayed with the other former Black Widows until joining the Thunderbolts. We think it's likely that Yelena or Alexei will be responsible for recruiting her, since they are the ones on the team who already know her. We are also excited with the possibility that the MCU's Taskmaster will be given a bigger role in the future, whether in this movie or in other adventures featuring the Thunderbolts. As you can tell, Taskmaster in Marvel Comics is a formidable antagonist who can go up against Avengers and others among the most powerful heroes. It is pretty clear that the effectiveness of Taskmaster was reduced to turn him into a Black Widow villain, although it would not make sense to have a super soldier with photographic reflexes fighting the MCU's Natasha Romanoff. Fans were still a little sad to learn they would never see the actual Taskmaster in full display on screen. But who knows? Maybe Antonia will get a super soldier serum while out on a mission with the Thunderbolts. We would love to see that. What would you like to see happening to Taskmaster? Let us know in the comments, and remember to subscribe. Welcome to CBR. Thunderbolts is bringing back some long-forgotten characters back to the MCU, including Ghost, the villain of Ant-Man, and the Wasp. Let's get into Ghost's story in comics and movies to understand her role in the new team. The Ghost from Marvel Comics is very different from the one in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The first major and obvious difference is that Ghost is a male character in comics. Ghost first appeared as an antagonist to Iron Man in 1987. Nobody really knows his real name. In his debut, he was hired by Carrington Pax, a leading executive of the Stark Enterprises rival Roxxon Oil. His mission was to sabotage one of Stark's companies, but Iron Man managed to stop him. However, Ghost went rogue and went after Iron Man for revenge. In only his second appearance ever, Ghost killed another villain, Spy Master, proving how dangerous he would be. Ghost and Iron Man's battle went on for 3 issues, ending with the apparent death of Ghost as he fell through a melted floor and Iron Man could only find his burnt costume. Ghost reappeared sometime later in Italy, this time hired by Justin Hammer. Once again, the villain ended up fighting not only Iron Man but turning against his employer. Ghost was then hired by the Kingpin to steal the new Roxxon process to create synthetic vibranium in the Vibranium Vendetta crossover. He continued to be a villainous mercenary and mainly fought Iron Man until the Dark Reign event when Norman Osborn rose to power in the Marvel Universe. Osborn assembled a Thunderbolts team and Ghost was recruited. At first, the team consisted of Ghost, Yelena Belova as Black Widow, and Eric O'Grady as Ant-Man, but it would also later include Mr. X, Paladin, Scourge, and Headsman. Yet, once again, Ghost was not really on anyone's side, but looking out for his own interests. Ghost did not like Norman Osborn or any other political leader, and was taking part in the Thunderbolts to sabotage the team from within. His personality started to show more, and he established himself as someone who despises the American corporate system. After the fall of Norman Osborn and the end of the Dark Reign, the Thunderbolts were reformed by Luke Cage, and Ghost joined this new version of the team. Luke Cage's Thunderbolts also included Songbird, Juggernaut, Crossbones, Moonstone, Fixer, Man-Thing, and Luke Cage himself. During his time with this version of the Thunderbolts, Ghost had to often deal with the Avengers and eventually got over his hate for Iron Man. Often seeing things black or white, Ghost tends to hate anyone he deems connected to corporate America. So moving past his negative feelings towards Tony Stark was a huge step in a new direction. He began to find redemption and became a complex anti-hero. It was also during this era that Ghost finally revealed his origin story. In Thunderbolts number 151, he tells Moonstone what made him abandon his humanity and live like a ghost. He was once a promising data engineer for a major computer corporation and the person behind the invention of the revolutionary ghost tech. His technology consisted of a series of computer chips that phased into an intangible state before overheating. They could still function in this phasing state and hold an incredible amount of data. Naturally, he was the most valued employee at the company, and the executives became incredibly wealthy. But these executives' corruption had no limits, and that soon began to negatively affect Ghost, who was a simple man. These executives would shower him with expensive gifts and facilitate sexual favors from other employees, keeping him in a perpetual state of trance. They eventually facilitated the human trafficking of Ghost's girlfriend, and when she threatened to expose them, they had her killed. Her death caused him to fall into a deep depression, even though he still didn't know the whole truth. Lost in his grief, the man merged his own body with the ghost tech, forming a connection with the company's system. This is how he discovered the company ordered the murder of his girlfriend. Filled with rage, he fought the company executives one by one and erased all information about his past life from all archives. Now under the identity of the Ghost, his new life mission was to sabotage and destroy all power-hungry companies and corporations. It's worth noting that Ghost's distrust of institutions was not limited to corporations. He also expressed contempt for governments and superheroes who operated under political influence. This ideology often put him at odds with more traditional heroes, but also made him a guaranteed ally in battles against authoritarian threats. One important detail about his origin story is that this is what Ghost tells Moonstone in this issue. but it may not be how things actually happen. Ghost did not exactly trust Moonstone, so he would have reasons to lie, especially given his personality. Another factor that makes it harder to believe anything Ghost says is that his phasing power is known to affect his mind, so it's really up to the reader to believe him or not. In a process that differs from what happened to his female counterpart in the MCU, the Ghost of Marvel Comics has no innate powers, but acquired his abilities through technology. Ghost's abilities are primarily derived from a technologically advanced suit containing ghost tech. Bonding with this suit grants him a unique power set. His self-designed battlesuit utilizes polarized Eternons to achieve intangibility and invisibility. This technology allows him to phase through solid matter and become undetectable to most sensory equipment. However, he cannot be both intangible and invisible simultaneously. Becoming intangible renders him partially transparent but not fully invisible. His suit also enables him to extend these abilities to objects and other people he touches, facilitating his plans of sabotage. Ghost's mask is equipped with cybernetic circuitry that permits mental control over his suit's functions. It also contains a personal transmitter and receiver for communication purposes. The mask's advanced sensors can detect heartbeats and life signs, and its speech recognition capabilities allow Ghost to lip-read conversations from a distance. These features make him an exceptional spy. Ghost's suit can disrupt or override electronic devices upon contact. This ability extends to mechanokinesis, where he can control other powered suits by phasing into them. For instance, he once took control of Mage 5's armor using this method. His suit can also deliver powerful electric shocks capable of incapacitating opponents, further enhancing his power in combat. Ghost's suit grants him limited flight capabilities, allowing him to levitate and move through the air at modest speeds. This mobility feature enables him to navigate complex environments and escape dangerous situations with ease. His expertise in computer science allows him to hack into most systems effortlessly, making him a significant threat to technologically reliant adversaries like Iron Man. Over time, he has also become proficient in the use of firearms. Ghost's unique phasing abilities made him a one-man infiltration army, capable of entering the most secure facilities unnoticed. His sabotage missions often had political and corporate ramifications, as he exposed hidden scandals and corruption. However, Ghost's prolonged use of his suit and isolation have contributed to his mental instability. He has become increasingly reclusive and socially detached, which may impair his judgment and decision-making abilities. This psychological vulnerability is one of his few weaknesses, and it's potentially exploitable by those who understand his psyche. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Ghost takes a different approach, the core themes of manipulation, suffering, and redemption are all still there. The Ghost of the MCU shares some similarities with the original, but she is ultimately a different character called Ava Star. Played by John-Kamen, Ava Star has only appeared in the 2018 movie Ant-Man and the Wasp so far in the franchise. Ava Star is the daughter of Catherine and Elias Star, two brilliant quantum physicists. Her story as a villain begins in her childhood, with a catastrophic quantum experiment conducted by her father, who was a former colleague of Hank Pym. The relationship between Yelena Star and Hank Pym soured due to creative and ideological differences, leading to Elias being expelled from Pym's research team. Determined to continue his work independently, Elias conducted a high-risk quantum experiment in his private lab. The experiment failed, which resulted in the death of her parents and left Ava in a state of molecular disequilibrium, causing her to phase uncontrollably through matter and live in constant pain. When the fire department arrived, they were unable to touch Ava. She was then adopted by her father's ex-colleague, Bill Foster. He encouraged her to learn how to control her powers, and she eventually learned how to solidify herself again. Foster began to dedicate his life to finding a cure for Ava. He developed a new quantum chamber in the process, which allowed her to temporarily stabilize her body. As an adult, Ava was recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. and trained under the codename Ghost. Despite her skills and dedication, she was manipulated by the organization, which promised a cure for her condition, but ultimately failed to deliver. She later realized how Dr. Foster was the only person in her life who did his best to keep her safe. According to Ava, S.H.I.E.L.D. built her a suit so she could control her phasing, but her affliction was seen as an opportunity for them to exploit her. They would never cure her. Disillusioned with S.H.I.E.L.D., Ava and Foster went rogue and continued to work together to find a cure for her phasing. This brought Ava and Dr. Foster into conflict with Scott Lang, Hope Van Dyne, and Hank Pym in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Believing that the quantum realm held the key to saving her, Ava made it her mission to absorb quantum energy. Hank Pym's lab contained the tools and technology required to locate Janet Van Dyne, Hope's mother, who had been trapped in the quantum realm for decades. Ava sabotaged their plan, because she hoped that the quantum energy within Janet's body could stabilize her long enough for Foster to develop a permanent cure. Ava was never evil, but her desperation drove her to extreme measures. She attacked Hank, Hope, and Scott multiple times in pursuit of what she needed, believing that her survival depended on accessing Janet's quantum energy, regardless of the risk to Janet herself. This created a moral dilemma, highlighting Ava's tragic nature. She was not motivated by malice or power, but by the agony of her affliction and the fear of death. Over time, even Dr. Foster began to question the morality of their approach. He refused to allow Ava to harm Janet and urged her to find another way. Though initially unwilling to listen, Ava's perspective shifted during the final act of the film. She eventually realized that not all people viewed her as a tool or a threat. For the first time, someone who didn't owe her anything had shown her compassion, and it was the very person she planned on stealing quantum energy from. Ant-Man and the Wasp marks one of the few times the MCU had a villain who is not motivated by big goals of conquest or revenge, but simply the desire to live a normal life. Unlike the technological transformation through ghost tech that the Marvel Comics Ghost goes through, the Ghost of the MCU has powers due to a completely different process. Yet, the result is pretty similar. Both have the power to control the density of their body, being able to phase through matter. Ava's abilities stem from her quantum-altered physiology. She can phase through solid objects, become invisible, and has superhuman agility. This puts her in a unique position within the MCU's ongoing exploration of multiverse-related science and technology. Her combat style is complex. It incorporates Muay Thai, kickboxing, judo, and even taekwondo. Sadly, her powers come at a cost. The constant molecular instability causes her immense pain and threatens her life, so she needs periodic exposure to quantum energy for stabilization. Towards the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ava is still desperate to obtain quantum energy. Janet Van Dyne, recently rescued from the quantum realm, empathizes with Ava's suffering and voluntarily transfers some of her own quantum energy to stabilize Ava's condition. This act of compassion marks a turning point for Ava, who finally relaxes for the first time. With the authorities closing in and her condition stabilized, Ava chose to retreat with Dr. Foster rather than continue down a destructive path. The two went off the grid, happy to have found a seemingly permanent solution to Ava's stabilizing problem. This is the point where Ava is right now before her comeback in Thunderbolts. Ava Star will soon return as a member of a team assembled by CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. The team also includes Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, US Agent, Red Guardian, and Taskmaster. Together, they will face off against enemies like the Void, the dark alter ego of the powerful superhero known as the Sentry. John-Kamen has confirmed in interviews that audiences will see a different Ghost in this film. With her condition now finally under control, Ava will have a newfound peace. Her powers used to be unstable not just physically but also emotionally, as she was constantly in a heightened state of anxiety due to the pain and unpredictability of her body. This makes her one of the most tortured characters in the franchise before her redemption. That is something she has in common with the other members of the Thunderbolts, especially characters like US Agent. Ava was never under mind control when she decided to attack Ant-Man, for instance. She will probably relate more to John Walker, who also made incredibly selfish decisions from a completely sane mind. Some fans speculate that Ava's improved control could unlock advanced uses of her phasing, including the ability to interact with multiple dimensions, a skill set that would be crucial against the Void and could later help in case of multiversal collapse in Secret Wars. We already know some characters from Thunderbolts will also appear in Avengers Doomsday, so we expect big things from the entire team. Whether she ultimately remains with the Thunderbolts or breaks away to pursue her own path, Ava Star is finally being positioned as more than a tragic villain. She's becoming a layered, evolving character. The upcoming Thunderbolts movie is scheduled to be released on May 2nd, 2025. Until then, let's discuss our expectations for Ghost and the other members of the team. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, thanks for watching CBR.